Hi everybody, sorry for the delayed start. My computer was not cooperating. I'm Jennifer Pillow White with Michigan Associates of Acupuncture and Integrative Medicine. I hope you're doing great. It's beautiful outside. I hope you were able to, yes I was, Jordan, but all better now. Thank goodness for the power of my iPhone. Hope you guys were able to enjoy the Blue Angels. We were just outside checking that out. It was pretty exciting to have them zoom by. So now that we're back inside, what we're going to do is going to, I don't know, I hope so. Good, there's Jordan. Yay, thank you. Anyway, sorry for that delay. So again, I'm Jennifer Pillow White with Michigan Associates of Acupuncture and Integrative Medicine. I'm your friendly neighborhood craniosacral therapist. What I'd like today to do is to talk a little bit about something we call about our gut brain or our second brain. Those who know me well, they will laugh when I say this. I utilize my gut brain all the time. I have spidey senses. I have this sense, which many of us all will have, is where we have that gut feeling and we sense that something's going to happen or such. That's kind of like relating to our gut brain, and my spidey sense never steers me wrong. Anyways, that's a totally inside joke. So what we're going to talk about with the second brain, which is classically known as the enteric nervous system, we're going to learn a little bit today about what it is, anatomically and physiologically, and and its connection to our grand nervous system, meaning our brain, and what we can do to support the gut and its enteric nervous system to help support our overall wellness with our nervous system. So when we talk about the enteric nervous system or our second brain, you'll see in literature referring to its interrelationship with the brain. And so we call it the gut-brain axis. And what we find with the gut-brain axis is that they are like symbiotic. They need each other, but they also can work independently. And that's what's really unique about specifically the enteric nervous system, in that it has actually been shown through years and years of science and research that it can actually instigate its own impulses to work independently, which are one of the few systems in our body that can do that. Our heart is another one where it has the ability to create its own impulse to beat. But also our gut has the impulse to create peristalsis or contraction to move foodstuff through the whole tube. To be more specific, the gut or the digestive system, we call it also the alimentary canal. It is one long modified tube that starts at our mouth and ends at our anus. It varies in its size in diameter, but it is one continuous tube going from our oral cavity to our pharynx, to our esophagus, to our stomach, to our small intestine, our large intestine, and then eventually out through the anus. And it works together, again, like in this peristaltic action to move materials from start to finish. Much like the peristaltic action you see with a snake. When you've seen those things in National Geographic where the snake eats the mouse and then that mouse kind of trails its way down the belly through the snake. Our gut tube or our alimentary canal does the exact same thing. And that action is instigated partly by the brain, no question, but also by its own self, which is the enteric nervous system, encouraging its motion no matter what, unless there's dysfunction, okay? So what the enteric nervous system we have just found is that it is a division of our autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system, you and I talked about, several weeks back when we talked about the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is that cranial nerve number 10. It's the wandering nerve, yada, yada, yada. We'll come back to the vagus nerve in a moment. But the autonomic nervous system is the system that basically has control over your body without conscious input. Okay, you're not like, oh, I am consciously moving something. That's your somatic. motion, where you're consciously deciding to contract and relax muscles to move your body parts. The autonomic has no conscious awareness to it. So we have two notable divisions of the autonomic nervous system, which we talked about when we talked about the vagus nerve, and that is the sympathetic nervous system, also known as fight or flight, or the parasympathetic, which is rest and repose. Okay. There's also another division of it, which is the enteric, which is, again, motion and action of the digestive tract. Getting phone calls during a Facebook Live is interesting. Sorry about that. Let's see here. The enteric nervous system is related to a bunching of nerves that branch off your spinal cord, and they create bundles, or called plexus or plexuses, in the gut that line and go leading out to these individual organs. Vagus nerve is involved in those plexuses as well. All right. The enteric nervous system, again, has its ability to control whatever needs to be controlled in the organ level, but it also has sensory fibers, a lot of them, that bring information back to the brain, basically telling, hey, things are going well here, things are not going so well here. So it's constantly having this feedback to the brain and back and forth, but all the while being able to control business as usual if necessary. Interestingly enough, the gut is extraordinarily, this enteric nervous system is no small matter. In regards to the number of neurons, it actually has more neurons related to it than the entire spinal cord. That's incredible. It's about 500 million neurons related to the enteric nervous system. Definitely not more than the brain, but a whole lot to create mission, to create and create the mission that is necessary to complete. Let's see here. A couple things that's important about our gut and regarding to health, and also in its importance, is that not only does it have a huge number of neurons relating to it, it also has a huge number of lymphatics related to it. Okay, and that's going to kind of tie into when we start talking about gut health and how it relates and how important it is. In that about 60 to 70% of our lymphatics, whether it be lymph vessels or lymphatic cells, like, white cells, are housing or relating to the gut. And that makes sense because our GI tube, our alimentary canal, is basically a connection with the outside world. Outside world's not always so clean, right? So if we're bringing in all this material into our body for digestion and hopefully absorption, we need to make sure that anything that we might have picked up can be destroyed if it's harmful. So that tells you a little bit in regards to its importance. Other things that is interesting to be to learn about the gut or the second brain is that it is not only about digesting food and absorbing food, it's also about mood. And that's where a lot of the more recent research in the last 10 years has come around. It's been really interesting, is that they're finding about 90% of serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that's produced in our brain, and as well as some other glands in our body. Serotonin, 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in our gut. Serotonin is specifically related to kind of well-being, low anxiety, kind of happiness quotient. That tends to be what it relates to. A lot of our psychopharmacology relates to enhancing serotonin in the system, like the serotonin reuptake inhibitors. A lot of those ones are related to anxiety and depression and stress management. Interestingly enough, most of that's made in our gut. We know that our guts aren't always necessarily the most healthy by American within America, and definitely the world too. So that is a fascinating thing. We'll kind of tie into this emotion in that what we have found in research with serotonin and gut health is that persons who tend to have a less than healthy gut Not because of serotonin per se, but if their gut is not healthy because they have IBS or they have Crohn's or they have leaky gut or they have dysbiosis, which is like an unbalanced flora or unbalanced bacterial level in their gut, they tend to be on the higher spectrum of anxiety or stress, interestingly enough. So some of the research had gone through looking at persons in their doing like questionnaires and seeing what is their general state of health and gut, as well as what is their mood. And they largely correlated together that if the persons who didn't have a proper gut health tended to, or ideal gut health, they tended to have a little bit more of the stress, reacting symptoms. Let's see here. Other things that we find is there's a high amount of production of GABA also in our gut lining, which is another neurotransmitter that relates to mental well-being and wellness. So that is something interesting. Leading to the gut health, one of the biggest things we think about when we look at gut health is in regards to the good guys that are in our gut. We all know that we have bacteria that are housed within our GI tract, predominantly our large intestine, our appendix, and such. We all naturally have this level of bacteria in the gut, and these guys have a symbiotic relationship with us, meaning that we help each other. You scratch my back, I scratch yours, kind of an idea. And so when we're born, we are actually inoculated right off the bat from mom, whether it be being born vaginally or being, in contact with kisses and skin-to-skin contact with mom, as well as other family members. We start to incorporate many of the good bacteria, the ones that aren't there to destroy you. There's lots of others that want to destroy you, but there's lots of them that are there, good guys. And what they do is they get into our tract and then they create, residence in our lower gut. And what they do for us is we eat food, we give them food basically to sustain their life. They help us digest. Okay, that's one thing they do. The other thing that they do is they will help balance the population of bad guys versus good guys. Because we're going to get bad guys into our system. I mean, over every square inch, there are billions of microbes on your skin and in your food, no matter how clean we are with hand washing, right? So the bad guys are going to get in. Our lymphatics are going to try to attack that, no question. But the good guys, the good flora, the good microbiome that we have inside of our gut will also attack. And they keep the yeast, they keep the viruses, they keep the bad bacteria, they keep them in check. However, if you don't have a good flora population or good microbiome, like the good guys, if you don't have a good population in there, the bad guys can flourish. All right? A lot of the things that we do in life don't necessarily encourage good flora. We drink too much coffee. I'm definitely guilty of that. We are too stressed. We don't sleep enough. We are, our food is not necessarily, pure and whole that would keep and sustain a good population in our gut. So what happens more times than not is our flora is not ideal, and that allows the bad guys to flourish. And what they found in research is in individuals, humans, that persons who have an improper flora balance, or what we call dysbiosis, if their dysbiosis is really out of ranks, they tend to have a little bit more of the anxiety scale symptoms. Interesting, what they found in rat studies is they found that rats, if they were having an improper gut biome and they were subjected to stressful situations, they would react with stress, like more than the other mouse who had a good biome and subjected to the exact same stressors. Okay, fine, simple enough. Then they did similar things where they had a rat with a improper gut biome, triggered with stressors. They end up having stress-related symptoms. Then they supplement that rat with the proper bacteria that that rat needs, and their stressors reduced. Interesting. Another study, which was really interesting, and I kind of briefly referenced this when we talked about the vagus nerve, is again, remember the vagus nerve is the nerve that comes from the brain, and it travels through your torso, and it has a lot of leads to the gut, telling the gut to either shut off or turn on, okay? Well, what they found is rats with this dysbiosis, improper balance, they would definitely have much more of a stressful response. But if they went in and they clipped the vagus nerve, not that I recommend doing that, highly not ethical to do on humans, but they clipped them in these studies, the rats instantly stopped with their stress behavior and their anxiety behavior. That was incredible. So that is leading us to think that, okay, first of all, gut health is extraordinarily important in regards to our perception and our reaction and our coping of stress. But also, is it a traveling mechanism? Because there are some other diseases, specifically Parkinson's, where they're finding persons with Parkinson's, and this is definitely not by all, but a large percentage, persons with Parkinson's disease tend to have a really off the scales dysbiosis. And so they feel that if they don't really know what that information means. Does that mean in order to ward off possibility of Parkinson's or maybe some other degenerative diseases, do we need to have to maintain good flora? Well, that's probably a good possibility. Persons who already have symptoms of some of these kind of conditions or similar conditions, would, adding proper, microbes, appropriate probiotics, would that help? Possible. So that's definitely one of the directions for research right now in regards to helping, neurological issues by treating the gut specifically. Let's see here. Other things that they have found is not just the dysbiosis, but another thing when they were doing the question and answer with many of the human studies, where they were asking them, what is your gut health and how does that relate to your stress? Another thing they found was that commonly these individuals many individuals would have long-term history of constipation, and that correlated with high levels of stress and anxiety. Now, again, relating to what we talked about a few weeks back with vagus nerve, that kind of makes sense where if our perception of stress is high, our nervous system, our brain, would send out a response to our gut and say, you know what, we're really stressed. We don't need to be digesting our food. Why don't you stop for a little bit, all right? And then once the stressor's gone, you can go ahead and start working again, but the stressor never goes away, right? So that kind of relates to what we talked about several weeks back. But this story, this kind of research is showing is that it could be the other way too. If the gut isn't healthy, it doesn't have the proper motility, it doesn't have the healthy lining that it needs, and thus encourages a more of a constipated, slow motility nature, that it can send feedback to the brain that would encourage more of an anxiety, stressful behavior. Fascinating. They just constantly work together, right? All right, so what could we do in order to improve gut health? Well, first of all, I'm going to say this. I am not a naturopath, so I can't make direct recommendations for nutrition. I can say what I have learned in my experience in working in applied kinesiology and in the natural healthcare field, as well as what I've learned in my own self. And these are going to be recommendations for you to talk to your medical provider about, okay? So a few things is in regards to encouraging ingestion of probiotics, whether it's powder or capsule form or whatever. Getting a good probiotic is ideal. Talking to your doctor about what that might mean would be a good discussion. Also, there's lots of probiotic foods that we can have, which are the fermented foods. Things like raw sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, yogurt, tempeh. Various different types of fermented foods are great for that. Also, prebiotic foods are really helpful too, because they are basically the food items that the good flora survive on. So things that are like high fiber, so fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, those are ideal. There are supplements that can be prebiotic as well. Talk to your doctor or your medical professional about that. It would be really good to look at. And that's about repopulating our gut, all right? Another thing that we could look at is one of my favorites, and that is dirt. Dirt. There are millions and millions and millions of microbes out on the Earth's surface. And we in a society now, we live in a world where we wash and wash. And I'm not talking the COVID-19 time. Even before that, we're washing and using antiseptic this and antiseptic that. But we are not also getting out and getting dirty, and we're not playing in the dirt. We're not letting our kids play in the dirt, and basically getting exposed to our old friends, the good bacteria. So getting out and getting your hands in the dirt, gardening, playing, whatever, there's great benefit by, inoculating yourself in that way. Now with COVID-19, do it wisely, right? Your own yard is safe, okay? Also, another thing that's in the dirt, it would be coming from these microbes, and that is essential fatty acids. These microbes, many of them, produce various fatty acid chains that when we get them on our hands and then ultimately ingest them, sounds gross, but that's what happens. What would happen is it's supplementing us with fatty acids, which we know promotes anti-inflammatory action. So there is a really good piece, again, to reducing inflammation in our body, specifically our gut, which helps the gut function more appropriately and helps our brain function more appropriately. So get out and play in the dirt. It's going to be really nice this week. Pets, highly ideal for many reasons. They're stress reducing, and they are dirty. So especially dogs, they go outside back and forth with the dirt and such like that. That stimulates our immune system. There is a tremendous amount of research that shows that those of us who have been exposed to animals or pets, growing up, that our microbiome is much healthier. So that's something to look at. In regards to other supplements for you to discuss with your healthcare provider would be other things that reduce your inflammation. So I mentioned the essential fatty acids, omega-3s, highly, highly beneficial. Also, turmeric is extremely beneficial. It reduces our inflammation in our body. Looking at diets that help to balance our acidity or our pH, we tend to be living in a world where we ingest more acidic foods than we do alkaline foods, and more acidic internal environment promotes more inflammation. And with more inflammation becomes more tear down of our own skin cells and our body cells, really, and thus letting the bad guys an opportunity to take us down further. Vitamin C is really beneficial in regards to healing cell lining. And that's just in general. So that would be, especially for those of us who have an unhealthy gut lining, like persons with leaky gut or irritable bowel or Crohn's, really could be beneficial. So talk to your healthcare provider about that. And less sugar. I love sugar, sadly. But then this is not just, refined sugar. This is natural, artificial sweeteners and even real sugar, like natural sugar. Bacteria love sugar. And good guys and bad guys. So if you have a dysbiosis to begin with, and then you're feeding your body sugar, you're basically giving it a petri dish to grow in more. So reducing your sugar intake can really help tremendously. In regards to things that we ourselves can do at home, in regards to exercises, I really like to keep it simple. I've mentioned in previous Facebook Lives about the diaphragmatic breathing. And that is, again, the exaggerated breathing where you have your hands on your belly and you breathe in through your nose and you blow your belly up into a huge Buddha belly. And then you hold it for a few seconds, sniff in a little bit more air, hold it, and then you exhale through your mouth. And all the while you're deflating your belly, kind of getting your navel to almost try to touch the back of touch your spine. And when you get to the end of that exhale, you do another, okay? And you're going to do this about 5 times, in and out, slowly, okay? This is not how you normally breathe. What this is exaggerated diaphragm breathing. The diaphragm needs to move up and down with our inhale, exhale. Many times we breathe more shallow. By doing that, exhale, inhale, exaggerated, it stimulates the vagus nerve, which helps. All right. It also manually massages all those gut organs, including your chest too, or the heart and the lungs. But it manually massages those organs as each time it goes down and it goes up. All right. Massaging it wakes it up. All right. That helps. And then lastly is one of my favorite ones, and it's again a breathing exercise. It's open mouth breathing. Okay, this is not how you will be breathing normally. I would highly recommend you not to breathe like this normally. But when you're doing an exercise, by breathing open mouth, just gently, you're not exaggerating the breath. You're just breathing naturally through your mouth, inhale, exhale, for about 1 to 2 minutes, several times a day. What it does is it relaxes the alimentary canal, not just the mouth, not just the pharynx, not just the esophagus. I mean, it really relaxes the entire tract. And again, if motility is an issue, which it is commonly, if motility in the gut is not ideal, then what will happen is it stalls. But if you can relax it, it wakes up. All right, so doing 1 to 2 minutes several times a day of this open mouth breathing is relaxing, first of all, as well as it wakes up the gut, which is ideal, helping it to balance. So that is what I have to offer you here today for our, what's today? Today is May 12th, our May 12th edition of Facebook Live. We miss you immensely. We look forward to seeing you soon. The acupuncturist will be in the office, soon. I will be back to the office shortly after that. I'm anticipating that I'll be back in sometime in June. So we're kind of taking it day by day. The girls will be back, the ladies. They will be back, doing some acupuncture really, really soon. So we look forward to seeing you. If you got questions about anything I talked about today, please call me. You call the office, and I would love to talk with you. Or if you just have questions in general, please don't hesitate to call me or to call my colleagues. We really look forward to seeing you and talking with you soon. Be well, be safe, wash your hands and mask up, and always continue to smile. I miss you. Be great.